Okay? Well, you ready to go? All right, Larry. Our board chair, Larry Pepper.
Thank you. Actually, I'm only vice chair.
Wendy?
I won't argue about that.
Get rid of the, you may be chair someday.
That could
On the
happen.
share screen.
So first, I want to thank Bob because he's a member and volunteer and he's going to serve as our MC today. So appreciate his work. And then I'm here basically to say welcome. Thank you very much for coming. The group in the room here and all those on is it up there? I don't know. All those on Zoom. Really, this is a tremendous show of involvement and really want to thank you for coming. I made some notes, I'll have to look at it now and then to see what I'm doing, but that's the main thing, is to say welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for wanting to participate, and just want to ask a question. Members of the board who are in the room, would you raise your hands? All right, got a few over here. All right. But the other one, all those who serve as a volunteer, would you raise your hand? Thank you. I know a lot of them are also members. And members of our staff, would you raise your hands? It may be helpful if you see those folks, and then when you talk to them later, you know, oh, that's a person who's working for us here. So, and thanks to all the volunteers. We have 3 goals for today. The first one is certainly just to get to know one another. And that's one of the reasons you were asked when you came in, and if you didn't do it, you're in trouble. No, you were asked to sit with some folks you don't really know yet, so that we have a chance to get to know one another. I appreciate that. The other thing, the second thing is, we are here to learn about what's going on at Arlington Neighborhood Village. And the last time we had an all-hands meeting was in 2020. There's a little thing that happened called COVID after that. And so we haven't really done the big groups the same way. We've done things out of the parking lot, which has been a way to get together and still be out in the open air. But we haven't done the all hands. So it's nice to have this together again. And I'm looking at this group and I think I should be looking for Zoom people, shouldn't I? There's all those folks there. So, but anyway, that's another part of it, is getting to know each other. And then the third thing, and this is really a big one for us, is to get ideas, to share ideas about things we can do better, differently, things you'd like to see, any suggestions along how we can work together to build a stronger ANV and continue the work of neighbors helping neighbors. So that's our goal for today. That's all of it. And did I have? I think I covered my notes. So thank you again. Hope it's a very interesting couple of hours together, and I'm going to turn it back to Bob. Thank you.
I told you might happen. What I'd like to do is just give us a chance to find out who we all are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this microphone and I'm going to look around. If you just say your name and whether you're a member or a volunteer or both.
Oliver Gredosh, member.
Arvin Andikar, volunteer.
Nancy Thomas, volunteer.
And member?
Yes.
Mike Marissa, member and volunteer.
Paxton Baker, member and volunteer.
Roy Barnes, member.
John Thomas, member and volunteer.
Janet Siddle, a brand new volunteer.
Mary Beth Chambers, volunteer.
Heather McDaniel, member.
Marianne Penner, member and volunteer.
Donna Pastore, member and volunteer.
Beverly Canizero, volunteer.
Sue Arnold, member and volunteer.
Virginie Vassilopoulos, volunteer.
Amanda Mayer, volunteer.
Carol Paquette, member.
Some of you may remember that this whole thing started with a committee that was chaired by Carol 10, 12 years ago.
Marilyn Connors, member.
Kevin Connors, member.
Rosemary Padberg, member.
And volunteer.
And Candace is member and volunteer.
Dolores Boyer, member. Sandra Rice, member.
We know who you are.
Connie Francis, member and volunteer.
Tom Griffith, volunteer.
Pat Burke, member and volunteer.
Wendy Shapiro, volunteer.
Cheryl Beversdorf, board member and also host of Coffee and Conversation.
We don't get away from it.
Mary Beth Clissa, volunteer.
Rebecca Maestri, volunteer.
Jean Hacken, guest of a very busy volunteer. Gretchen Martin, volunteer and member.
Michelle McMahon, volunteer. Jinx Slunger, new volunteer.
Melissa Mandel, member.
Margie Sauber, volunteer, planning to become a member. Barbara Clemens, member.
Shoku McKinnon, member, and I just want to use this opportunity to thank for these last couple of years for all the rides that I've got from the volunteers. Great people, and that's my only social event.
Faye Morford, member and volunteer.
Jean Rade, staff, I'm the Member Services Director. I've spoken with many of you on the phone.
Sandy Brooker, volunteer.
Andre Mirza, member and ex-volunteer.
Mary Isaacson, member and new volunteer. Karen Bennett, member and volunteer.
We know who she is.
Yeah, Wendy Zager.
And in the back is our technology guru. Meet all of you. So how are we gonna do this?
They've introduced themselves to each other.
And we can't,
We can't either hear them or see them.
Oh,
Okay, so.
Somebody could read the list on the screen.
I'm looking to see if we can do that.
Now, let's see here.
So there on the screen, you're right, there's the list of.
Okay. There's 29 folks online.
how many?
29.
29 people online, not one here. How are we gonna do this morning? Wendy has an absolutely fabulous and very informative slide presentation that she's gonna do. It'll take a little while, take 20 minutes or so. And then we're gonna have an opportunity to ask questions or make comments. And how we're gonna do this is we're gonna set time for each table to chat about what they just heard from Wendy and come up with questions or comments. And then we're gonna go one table at a time and ask you for one question. All right, and we'll go around and get each table, and we'll keep going around until there are no more questions. So every table, if you got a couple questions, you'll have a chance to ask them, and we'll hope Wendy can answer them.
And the online folks will.
The online folks are gonna be able to put their questions in chat. And Jean will be over here on a computer reading what their questions are. So once I go around the table once, she'll give us a couple questions from the folks on Zoom. All right? You're on Zoom, you can talk to each other, but when you have to ask a question, just put it in chat and Jean will pick it up. After we finish that, we're gonna have another question for table conversation as well as Zoom conversation. And that is, where do you think, as Larry said, what about the future? So what would you like this organization to be in 3 to 5 years? So I'm putting that in your heads now, as something we'll be asking, we'll have to talk about later on. And then we'll try and get out of here by noon this morning. Okay, so Wendy, questions, comments, and then looking at the future. Gotcha? All right, cool. You're on.
So thank you very much. First, I have a technical question to ask. Who should be recording this feed? Should we start recording through Gene's computer, or should no one else?
It's being recorded since the beginning.
Okay, thank you. May I ask? First of all, thank you. Thank you all for being here. I can't tell you how surprised I am to see you all, given all of the predictions you had as to what today was going to be. I actually was suggesting we start a pool and said, of the 65 people who RSVP, how many do we expect to show up in the room? I was down to 20. I was assuming this was all going to be on Zoom and not in real life. So all I can do is say thank you so much, and for all of us to reflect on what it means. I mean, it means how much you care about this organization, the work we're doing, providing feedback to us and where we want to go. And, it gives me goose pimples to think about something like that. Second thing is I'm going to apologize. This is a dense presentation because there was a lot we wanted to share with you. I mean, normally everyone who does PowerPoints knows it's supposed to be 2 or 3 words, a picture, no real words or text on screen. I broke the rule all the way. There's lots of text. But to make it easy for you, on each table, you have a handout, copies of my PowerPoint slides. You've got pens. You've got ANV branded Post-it notes that you can write reminders to yourself on. So there's lots of material on your tables that you can use as a tool to help us as we go through this. The other thing I have to say is I know we've heard from the people on Zoom, all of our mics are very sensitive. So they're hearing all sorts of things. When we shuffle papers, we squeakily walk around the room. So we really have to be quiet as mice. I know that's an old-fashioned term, but that's the one we're going to use. I don't know that the mics in my house are quiet. I hear them all the time. So having said all that, let's get started. And let's get started. It's like, come on, move forward. You know how many times we tested this and it all worked, and now it's not? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to come back and try again. Sorry, guys. Let's try one more time. Share my screen. Here's the presentation. Maybe this is the presentation. And that's the PowerPoint chart. Sorry for talking out loud. I'm going to share it. Okay, there it is. There. Okay. Yes, I know. Just clap me off the stage right now. Okay, so what are we going to do? First, we're going to look back. Then we're going to got some data-heavy slides that show trends. We're going to just remind ourselves that we did create a strategic plan in April of 2022, and then we start getting feedback from everybody. So let's start with the look back. 2015. This was the Arlington Neighborhood Village key points. We started with something called Wisdom Works. Don't worry about what that was. But this is what we refer to as the founders sitting around the kitchen table and saying, we've got neighbors who need help, what can we do? Those founders did research, they found this model called the Village, and based on that model, they incorporated it as a nonprofit, they started operations, and things moved forward. We originally thought we were going to be villages with an S, that each little community in Arlington would be sort of a hub and spoke. Didn't turn out to be the way it is. We've got founders here who can tell us that story, Carol and Pete and others. But we decided we're going to be a village. We're going to take care of all of Arlington. So we moved forward. Again, the mission from 2015, it's almost unchanged. We tweaked it a little bit for wordage, but it simply says that we're looking to help people continue to live in their own homes as they age, safely, independently, and with an enhanced quality of life, providing services and support. You can find this mission up on our website now and all sorts of other places. Here we are, 8 years later, still committed to the same goals and mission. Also in 2015, we had goals. I'm not gonna read all of these, but just the goals that we had in 2015, similar to the goals that we have now. Providing services and support, helping people with social activities, looking for intergenerational ties. And look at the people in this room, we've got intergenerational ties. Single point of contact for information, peace of mind for family members and friends, serving all eligible Arlingtonians regardless of ability to pay. In the very beginning, ANV was seeded with a $5,000 donation. It was an anonymous donation. I will say it was one of our founders, so that there would be a financial aid fund. And so that the membership fee would never stop us from being able to offer membership to a lower income Arlingtonian. And that's changed over the years, and I'm gonna tell you about that, it's an exciting story. But from the very beginning, we didn't want the membership fee to stop people from joining. So how does that translate to trains? And again, if I'm standing in people's way, I can move a little bit, but I don't want to get anything sweeping back at you. So if you look at our membership information, there is a 2016, 2015, 2014, I don't know where those numbers are, I can't find them. I'm sorry, maybe someday we will. But if I know, I can get a solid number in 2017, we were 205 people. Look at where we are today, 377 and growing because of the good work that's happening in our village from Jean and Mary Ellis, who are talking to prospective members and bringing them on board. But more importantly, and this is based on feedback we got in the 2020 and the 2021 all hands meetings, discounted membership, that financial aid fund that I talked about, 22 in 2017, we're down now to basically 130. So of our 377 members, 130 are either paying a discounted or some are paying nothing because their income is so low. But that brings us to beginning, about 10% of our memberships were in the financial aid discounted membership, to now we're almost at 35% of our members. And that's something we as a village, I think, are really proud of. And that discounted membership, the numbers changed, adjusted, they went down. That's one of the reasons we got an even larger cohort. And let me also say, when someone has a discounted membership, 2 people in the organization know who those people are. Jean and myself. No one else knows. It's just, you don't have an asterisk near your name or anything like that. Everyone's a member, it's simply not shared. So when we look at our demographics, okay, when we say 377 members, there are 56 to 103. I would say there are only 9 people in the 50s. So it's not a well-represented cohort. But 73% are female. Maybe if we look around the room, we can see that statistic in play. When we start looking at age, 45% are over 80. 66% are over 75, 85% are over 70. So we're an older village. There are lots of villages that have younger, those 50-year-old members, but we're a village that skews a little bit older in terms of the people that we're helping. 60% of our members live alone, and of those living alone, the vast majority, 82%, are female. 34%, and we've already said this, are our discounted membership program. 31% have mobility problems, cane, walker, wheelchair, eyesight or hearing challenges, and 15% represent diverse backgrounds. And that's one of the statistics we're looking to improve over the coming years. I don't have such great statistics on volunteering. We want to have better stats on volunteers moving forward. But what you can see in the first column, that talks to the number of names in our database. Who said they wanted to volunteer with us? Well, that's all well and good, but the real question is, who actually volunteers? Who are the people who are raising their hands and doing things? When I look at that number, that's the second column, active volunteers. So we can look back the last 2 years, we have about 213, 215 active volunteers. And that's one of the challenges we have as a staff in the village. How do we get the people who said they wanted to volunteer, but haven't actually taken an action to volunteer? How do we engage those people? Challenge for us, challenge for all of us, but that's why that number, we we distinguish. We don't want to sit here and just brag about, oh, we have 400 volunteers. No, we don't. We have 200 volunteers. That's still a good number. Don't disagree. But we don't have as many as are in the database. And then we see what they've done. One of the ways we measure that is miles driven and the hours donated, how much time they volunteered. So all of you guys who are asked to report time in miles, it supports that statistic right there. It's a great performance measure. So let's also take a minute to look at what our service requests are. What have people asked us for? So fulfill service requests. These are not the ones that are canceled. These are not the ones that we were unable to fill. But look at how that number has gone up. From 2018, we did 2,000. In 2022, we did 3,200. This year, so far, 6 months, 1962. We'll do 4,000 service requests this year. So you can see that as the village grows with new members, what people ask for obviously also grows. But that's a phenomenal number. Look at how the types of services we fulfilled have changed. So in the very beginning, 72% were transportation. Can you imagine if that were the number today? We already know we have a challenge filling all our rides. 72% in the beginning. Right now, transportation is about 42%. And we have absolute numbers behind these statistics, but the percentages sort of tell the story. The thing that's gone up is this thing called errands. And errands sort of blossomed during the pandemic. All of a sudden, where a member and a volunteer would go together to the grocery store, people said, can you go to the grocery store for me? Can you pick up my prescriptions for me? They were aging in place. They were afraid to go out. So this thing called errands really bloomed in terms of how much and what we're doing for people. And then you can look at the other things we do: home chores, walking buddies, friendly visitors, tech help, and there's this catch-all of other. But the real changes is this transportation slight, significant change, and then errands going up. We do have a list at the front table in terms of the different services that we offer so that people can be reminded of what we do. So then let's talk a little bit about finances. What you guys all know, because you're members of our village, is that we have to raise money. So we raise money generally one of three ways. We have a membership fee, we seek grants, and we ask for individual donations. So when you look at those three legs of the stool, that's what powers our village. So you can look, again, the three different categories: membership fees, donations, grants, and see how that has changed. So in the beginning, 68% of our income came from membership fees. Today, 35% of our income comes from membership fees. Why the change? Look at grants. 8% in the beginning, 33% today. Big change. We started to get well known in the community. We were, the services that we were offering were recognized and valued. Grant makers discovered us, or we discovered them in reality. But these are, for the most part, competitive grants that we apply for, sometimes win, but the number of grants we've received has significantly gone up. And then you can see that, donations have gone up. Now, donations hasn't changed, well, it has changed, 24% to 33%, so donations have gone up, grants have gone up, membership fees less of a percentage of our overall income. But donations is, again, you can look at the absolute change from $28,000 in 2017 to $90,000 last year. These are important numbers. And why are they important numbers? Because when you look at what are our sources of money, then you start saying, well, what are you spending it on? You're a bunch of volunteers. Why does it cost anything? So to give you a sense of what we spend it on, this is our 2023 expense budget. This is what we think we're going to spend this year. You can see it comes down to $490,000. We're growing. We're growing in more ways than one. As we grow memberships, we're growing everything else. So, like with any organization, payroll is the biggest percentage. So when you're talking to Mary Ellis, to G, or myself, our salaries are in that number. The board approved this year that we're going to start paying fringe benefits to us. We've never had benefits before. It's taken us longer to figure it out than we like, but we are gonna start paying staff benefits. And we have to do that. It's what they deserve to make a living wage, and it's going to keep people's stickiness to us and not turning over. So paying that, and for those of us who've ever been in an organization, you know, as I said, personnel and benefits, just, they're significant numbers. Business expenses are what you expect, you know, the insurance costs and things like that that we have. Facilities and equipment is the rental on the space, you know, buying some computer equipment. Contract services, as much as we have staff on payroll, we also have consultants that are paid through contract. Two of the names you might know are Noel German and Cindy Salavantis. We didn't introduce the two of them as today when we were going over staff, but they're effectively staff. They're just not paid as employees, they're paid as consultants. Cindy's the volunteer coordinator. Noelle has had a variety of roles. Right now, she's managing our Zoom session, but Noelle has helped us with development, fundraising, grant writing, and also managing special projects as they come around. Most recently, I think all of you know about the tech coaching. So contract services are Noelle and Cindy, and also we have a bookkeeper. We have people giving us technology support, so we can make all our computers run well. And a variety, we have a care manager, who I think some of you know is pulled on to help especially frail members. So all sorts of expenses get packaged into that contract services line. I do have a detailed budget in front of me, so if anybody has questions after the meeting, I'm happy to go over this in more detail. And then program categories are things like paying the 55 plus membership for our members, the subscription to Washington Consumer Checkbook and stuff like that. You know, as an organization, we have no travel. Now, those of us, again, who live in bigger organizations, you know, you're never gonna see a zero travel budget. But here we have a zero travel budget. We're not going anywhere. Our business is our home base. So then we talk about how to get the job done. So as much as I just said we have staff, we have this incredible volunteer pool. And as many of you raised your hand a minute ago to say you're volunteers, that's how we get the job done. There is no other substitute for all of you. We have what we call direct service volunteers, and these are inside terms we use. Those are all the people who are providing services to members. Then we have what we call management volunteers. These are people who are helping us run the organization. Our board members, treasurer, secretary, president, and vice president, staff our committees, Beverly Canizero, who's our events committee chair, John and Mensit, who are on the events committee and do the games day, and do bocce every Monday, and do pop-up picnics the last Friday of every month. All of our volunteers have a different role. Some of them direct, some of them running and helping manage the organization. We've got 10 plus office staff volunteers. These are the people who are there Monday through Friday, morning and afternoon, answering the phone, responding to emails from our volunteers, making the match between members and volunteers to fulfill services. So we've got at least 10 office staff volunteers. Michael Raisin, Pat Burke, Gretchen does it as a substitute. She's a substitute teacher, office staff volunteer. If I kept looking around the room, I could probably cite more people, but this is always the task when we start looking. It's like, who am I going to leave out by accident? And then we have committee members. As I was scanning, Pat's longtime IT committee chair, making sure that our IT systems work and that we build new systems for the future. Board of directors, those guys raised their hand already. I'm not going to pay any attention to them. We've already talked about the paid staff consultants. And then we have partners, whether that's the Culpeper Garden, the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, Department of Parks and Rec, the 55 Plus program, the libraries, I can name lots of organizations, but we are partnering with all of these organizations to get the job done. Okay, so that's trends, numbers. Now this is sort of where it gets a little bit more dense in terms of what did we hear from the last all hands. So our first all hands, as Larry said, was in February 29th, 2020. I mean, great day, February 29th. Whoever does anything on that day? We did something, and I think we were the Jinx. We had a new volunteer named Jinx. And I'm just going to say that our all hands ANV meeting on February 29th jinxed and brought about COVID. Everybody's looking for why COVID happened. I know why COVID happened. We had our all hands on that day, we had 67 people in this room, almost as many as we have today. And 2 weeks later, the world changed and things shut down. But we did that all hands in 2020. But then we did another one in September 2021, this was on Zoom. So we shared what we've done, the progress we've made, where we want to go.
Is that a typo on the slide, because this is 2021?
Well, that was the second one we did on Zoom, 2021.
Okay.
So I'm just referring back as, in case people were wondering where COVID came from, we're taking responsibility. So when we look at 2021, what we heard back from you, we were doing a good job. Everyone liked the direction we were heading with increased membership and volunteers. Everyone loved the fact that we changed the discounted membership fee. It had been in the past, everybody at a low income below 49,000 paid 100. During COVID, we said we need to do more. So the board approved a sliding scale. So under 49,000, the fee was 100. Under 36,000, it became 50. Under 26,000, the fee became $25. And, for very low income people at risk, we didn't charge them anything, we just helped them. And we continue to have some of those members that we're helping today, who are paying nothing, but we're looking to convert them to members.
Sorry, Jean, is that income that predicates the scale, or is it net asset?
Oh, don't even ask that. It doesn't talk about your house. It looks about, if you look at your tax return, what's the bottom line in terms of income on your tax return? What are you getting on Social Security? You could show us a bank statement to show what your income is. But it doesn't consider, other assets that you may own. So we made changes in the membership fee. We started to see improvements in diversity, but we, as I say, all need to do more. We strengthened our financial position. We were doing good communication even during COVID. People were appreciative of the help that they were getting, and bottom line, they were proud to be part of ANV. That's what we were hearing in 2021. But we also heard you can do better, and we're happy to hear we can do better, because if we don't hear that message, how do we know what it is you want and need? So one, people said, keep going virtual. And we like the hybrid. Even today, Zoom is our best friend. Coffee and Conversation is on Zoom every Wednesday at 10. People wanted to stay. There are some people, I won't name names, who push for, let's get back together in person. But he has a happy hour that he manages, and that's an in-person event. But people, for the most part, want to stick Coffee and Conversation on Zoom. And part of that is because, one, people can participate in their homes easily, and two, we can get better speakers because they don't have to travel to get to us and then, take time to go somewhere else. People wanted to have a better way of knowing what events were. So on our new website, and I haven't mentioned the new website, we've got a good events calendar. Everything's there. You can click on it, you can get the information you need. Be better cognizant of people with mobility challenges. One of the things we've done is added that data element to the service request. So if somebody has a cane, a walker, or a wheelchair, we make sure that volunteers know that and that they can accommodate that in terms of the rides they're doing. They wanted to record a Coffee and Conversation. We've done that. It's up on YouTube. It's not like we have a big audience watching those YouTube videos, but they are posted on our YouTube channel and you can see it. And then they said, let's get back to some popular in-person stuff. So we have an incredibly active ladies' lunch that Rosalind Rubin manages, and a men's lunch that Tim Burns manages. So those are meeting on a monthly basis. And we've done some dine-arounds and some tours, not as many as we'd like. The secret here, if we want to do more of this, someone has to raise their hand and say, I'm going to manage that. Everybody needs something, needs a leader. But then there were suggestions for more, clean the cutter, writing groups, game night. John Thomas has games going every 2 weeks in Boston. We've got about 12 to 15 people participating in that. But there was a request for even more. And we agree, there's more we should be doing. We got to figure out who wants to lead that doing more. People asked for more in terms of information technology, and I think we responded to that with our volunteers who are going out to help with tech. You saw the increase in service requests, but also we now have tech coaches that will go back on a continuing basis, the same person, to help people become more familiar with their technology. We provide, when things get donated to us, laptops and tablets, we clean them up, one of our volunteers looks at them, and then we do redonate it to the members who might need it. I'm not gonna say that's a big pipeline, but if any of you have stuff you don't need anymore, You got a friend in ANV, donate it to us. And we decided that updating our website was a high priority, and we did do that. And if you haven't visited our website recently, go look at it. I think it's phenomenal. And if you see anything that needs to be improved, come back. What do we need to do better with volunteers? Bottom line on volunteers seems to be we need to do more training. So we bring our volunteers on, we explain to them what the storyline is, but we can do more training, and volunteers want more training. And we're committed to getting that done in the coming year. But we want to talk about what volunteers want in terms of training. Sometimes we hear the volunteers want to get together amongst themselves. We're happy to try to make that happen, but we haven't done it yet. They ask for more detailed service requests that go out. We're trying to do that. Again, keep us posted on whether our service requests are giving you the information we need. And as we say, no matter what we do, we always need more drivers. So if you know anyone who's looking to volunteer, has a car, has a clean driving record, send them to us. More, we have a phone buddy program, wanted to keep that up, more about healthcare services, more about starting interest groups, promoting the peer manager more widely. Some of the transportation requests are challenging. What can we do to make them easier? You'll see later on someone put in a request, suggested and said, let's do them one way. It's a challenging request. Someone can get them there and someone else can pick them up and take them home. There are ideas like that we need to consider. And then there's a request for a membership director. So I want everyone to know, we know that request is there. We know it's on the list. We haven't had a chance to be able to do it. We need to talk to everybody about what they think they want in a membership directory. Oh, I'm going to run out of breath soon. Communications, and again, these were things we heard in 21. Work to increase diversity. Let's do a better job of having our members and volunteers share information about ANV. Let's get in front of civic associations and faith organizations and do more with churches. So one way we're responding to this communications request is that we are, the board approved, one of the new positions is a communications marketing and outreach position for ANV. We posted that job. We have about 5 or 6 quality candidates that we're talking to. We hope to fill this position soon, and that will permit us to have some one person who's really gonna spend the time and attention on that big 3-for-1. In a large organization, you have a communications person, a marketing, and an outreach person, 3 different. It's gonna be for us an all-in-one, and one person is gonna get that done. All of that informed our strategic plan, which the board approved in 2022. And again, in the middle of your tables, you have a copy of that strategic plan. There's nothing in that plan that's gonna be confused, new to you or you haven't seen it before. Improve our awareness in the community, increase our membership, recruit more volunteers, strengthen the organization's capacity and infrastructure, and support the funding model to keep rates, getting our profit. As we grow our membership, etc., we need to grow the resources that support the organization. I'm not going over in detail what's on the strategic plan. There's subjects and areas that we've covered in the last conversation. So now the question, I'm going to sit down just for 1 minute, because as you can imagine, I too am getting old. Oh, that feels so much better. What did we hear from the most recent survey that we sent out to all of you on Survey Monkey? So as you know, in August, we sent out surveys to members and volunteers. The volunteer survey generated 136 responses, which is really good. In looking at the volunteers who responded, it was somewhat evenly split between new volunteers and more seasoned volunteers. 105 of them had done direct service, and that's, as you remember, people who are helping members directly. 62 of those people had provided rides. I mean, you can't have better statistics than this. 96%, 98%, 97%. The volunteers who responded are happy. Volunteers who didn't respond, on the other hand, we don't know what they're thinking. But the volunteers, and that's a large number, 136, really gave us high marks in terms of satisfaction. Most of those people who responded are volunteering 3 or 4 times a month. But the biggest thing that we heard from that survey, from volunteers, is that we need a self-service website. Volunteers need to be able to go in, see a calendar of open requests, see something coming up on Wednesday at 10, saying, I can do that, clicking on it, and grabbing that service request on their own. We know that's what you want. We are working to build that for you. It's not gonna happen in the next 2 or 3 months, but we know it's what we want, we're gonna make it happen. They also say too many emails, and that's because that's our system right now. The way we let you know about open requests are a noon and a 3 o'clock email, and you gotta open it up and you gotta read it to know what's going on. We are responding a little bit to the too many emails. Jean is testing a new system, we're sending out transportation and errands on the same frequency, but the other service requests are going out on a much less frequent basis, so people's inboxes aren't filled with, 6 emails from ANV at noon and 6 more at 3 o'clock. So we're trying to make that work. We're also seeing what the impact is. If it means that we're not filling the other service requests, we'll go back to something more frequent. But we heard that from the survey, we want to see what we can do to make it better and for our volunteers. Again, what we heard in the survey, initial training is adequate, but they want more. They want more advice when we're helping, especially frail members. And that ties to, again, the information we looked at the very beginning, our age of our membership. Our members are getting older. Older people are finding us and joining. Well, that means that some folks are able to get around easily, but others are finding, either through healthcare concerns or chronic illnesses, that they are frailer. So how can our members and volunteers, how can our volunteers better serve frail members, and how do they handle difficult situations that come up? Volunteers said they want new and experienced volunteers to interact so they can learn from each other, rather than everyone having on-the-job training. Refresher training for experienced volunteers. The system does change. Experienced volunteers should know if there are new things in the system they need to be aware of. Periodic training on topics of interest. We'd love to know what those topics are so that we can arrange it, and a better understanding of how the office works. What did we hear from member surveys? And again, this is a very light touch of looking at the analysis of these surveys, because they really just closed about 2 weeks ago. So what we saw from members, we got 100 responses, and that's to be expected. Our members are not so much on the internet and email and online surveys as our volunteers are. 3/4 of them are full members getting full services, 70% live alone. Again, high numbers about it's a good value, treated with respect, the operations work, volunteer services are good, they recommend membership to others. Now you see, if we're being fair to ourselves, volunteer services are lower than the other responses. So that's where we've got to look. I'm sure that that's related to, for example, we know that we can't fill every single ride request that we get. And when we can't fill it, we try to the last minute to get somebody, but you may be hearing at the last minute that we don't have somebody. And we always tell people to have what we call a plan B, but I think when you see volunteer services down to 86% compared to the other percentages, we know what's driving that, and again, it's incumbent on us to figure out how to make it better. They think we should be advertising the discounted membership fee better, and that, part of that plan B is the senior discount for taxis, and that we should be advertising that better so people know about it. And I'm sure, having said that, there's some people in this room who say, what are you talking about? What discount for taxis? And so we've got a flyer that can provide more information on that. People want referrals for good contractors. They want to know if I have a plumbing problem, who should I call? If I have hundreds of different issues that can come up, electrician. Our handy person volunteers, our home maintenance volunteers can do a lot of things, but they can't do things if it requires a license. So, they're limited, but people want to know who are good contractors that we should get in touch with. They think we should be doing a better job of publicizing the services that are available, and clearly members want a way to connect with others who live nearby. That's easy to understand. But what we're seeing more of, members who speak the same language. So as much as we earlier gave you a demographic look at who's ANV, I didn't capture and who uses English as a second language. So we have clearly Spanish-speaking people, no question. But we have Russians, French, Turkish, Pakistani. Jean could go on with more languages. These are older adults. Their kids may be English-speaking, but as older adults, they're not. They'd love to be able to connect with other people who speak their language. So again, I'm only referring to the fact that we hear these things, and this is what we heard in the survey. You know, how can we improve, again, what are ideas for improving ANV? I mentioned it briefly before, you know, would one-way rides be an answer for some of these hard to fill? You know, there's a yin and yang one-way rides. Yes, you know, you got one person doing it here, one person doing it here. The other side, you gotta find 2 volunteers versus 1. And when that volunteer takes somebody, drops them off, there's gotta be pretty good information about where the drop-off happened, what the member looks like that they're gonna be picking up, so that people can find each other. So it's not as if switching to one-way rides, is it a panacea, is that the right word? It's not the solution, it's not the end-all and the be-all. It may be a solution for some things, but it's something we have to consider. You know, we just talked about it, better information on people with English as a second language. There is a recommendation that we should, you know, form a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, that this may be one way for us to increase the diversity of our members. And again, we keep hearing, making the process for volunteers to accept service requests more efficient, and I've touched on that a couple of times in this discussion. So when we look forward, you know, what does the future look like? And this is where we're going to be asking all of you for your input as well. One, we're growing. You saw that statistic, you know, 205 to 377. I know Gene will tell us that 377 is even higher today. I'm sure we're up to like 383 or 385. 5-year strategic plan. That's the direction it's sending us. You know, when you look at that strategic plan, that's what we have on our plate right now to get done over the next 3 to 5 years. So be familiar with that, give us feedback if you think it's not the right direction. We need to continue to increase our internal capacity. So that's the 3 full-time staff I've talked about, it's the consultants that we're talking about, it's the new communications person that we're talking about hiring. We're thinking about hiring someone who helps us build new programs. So we need to increase internal capacity, and that may also mean more contractor support. Strengthen our partnerships with all of these acronyms, and that's clearly on our agenda, and we're doing that, no problem. Have a better plan for increasing referral members, because that's not going to get any better. That's only going to get, I don't want to use the word worse, it's going to get more challenging. There are going to be more people who need more help. So we need to have a better plan for how we can provide that help, or how we can have a better referral process that gets people the help that they need. We need to continue to strengthen our financial aid fund. If we're sitting there looking at the financial aid members growing today to 130 and knowing it's going to be bigger, we've got to raise money for that financial aid fund. I think all of you probably know we do a fall campaign on fundraising. We're probably going to focus that on the financial aid fund this year so that we can really bolster that fund. We need to diversify our income streams. I showed you that grant number. What a great number. We love it. We love that grant number has gone up. But getting those grants is a challenge. It's not like once you get a grant, they're going to support you for the next several years. So you're always looking for new grant opportunities that you can apply for and potentially win. So we've got to do that. And, you know, a little bit of what you're seeing in these charts. We have a richness of data, and we're not even close to tapping into it. And we need to do a better job of using that data to drive decisions that we make. And I'm not saying we're not using data, it's just we have so much and we just don't have the skill set, time, resources to tap into that. So again, if any of you are data geeks in the room, come see me afterwards. But the bottom line for all of us is that we're providing essential services, no question about that. I hope that people like Carol, Pete, Pax, Bob, Mike Murtha, others who've been here since Dolores, others who've been here since the very beginning, appreciate that we're just not a little nonprofit working, you know, in that little niche. We're supporting all of Arlington. We've got partners across the county. We're well respected by folks in aging, housing, DPR, and elsewhere, and we are a vital part of the safety net for seniors. And we should all be just simply be proud of all that we've been able to accomplish. And then, you know, I love this little picture. This was much like all families, you know, families never want to get together for that group shot. Never want to get together. I fight my family with this all the time. And we got together at Christmas in St. Andrews, and we demanded that people come forward for a group shot. So we've got it, and I use this picture all the time, just as a reflection of who we are and what we're getting done. So with that, Bob is gonna take us back and start working us into breakout sessions, the breakout discussions. Huh?
Can I just make one?
Sure.
Underline your statement about how important the village is.
Carol, I gotta do this because the people on Zoom can't hear you.
Oh, right, sorry.
I just wanted to underscore Wendy's comment about how important the village is to Arlington County. I was making a presentation about villages to the State Association of the Area Agencies on Aging. And Helen King from the Arlington office said they could not have made it through COVID without the support of Arlington Neighborhood Village. And there were a couple of other area agency on aging people saying they had depended on their villages as well. So you're doing really important work, and thank you.
Thank you for helping us get started. Okay, as I was listening to Wendy, thank you, Wendy, that's like, I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose. Just so much information. But I forgot to do a couple of things at the beginning. One was to say I'm Bob Stone. I'm a member, volunteer, been around for a while. And I forgot Mary Alice over here at the door saying hello to people. She's our number two person helping keep the office going. And that number that you didn't mention, even though the member services got a little bit lower percentage, we still fulfill over 95, 97% of the requests. Which I think is, and that's been true since the beginning. So you may have to wait till the last minute to get it, but we try and get somebody there to help. And the other thing that, when I'm speaking to a group of seniors, other than membership dues, we all have wills and estates, many of us do. So don't forget to put that ANV in there. So your heirs will help us a little bit. Okay, now we're going to ask for any questions or comments that you have. Now, how we're going to do it is each table is going to have about 5 or 7 minutes to chat among yourselves. And then please identify one person who I'll give the mic to ask your question. And to the extent that Wendy can answer it, she'll answer it. You folks on Zoom, you can all talk to each other. And Noelle, you didn't hear this before, so heads up. And they're going to talk to each other, and when it comes there for your folks on Zoom turn to ask a question, would you please chat the question to Jean? She's over here on Zoom also, and she'll be able to let us know what the questions are. Okay. Got it? Chat among yourselves, find somebody who will let us know what your questions are.
Okay, so it's really loud. I'm gonna ask Pete.
Jane, turn off your mic.
Okay. So I think Pete is doing a good job of trying to find him, but I think it's gonna take a second.
Go ahead, Noelle.
Pete, it's way too loud. We can't hear. There. Okay. All right. Much better. So can anyone hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So everyone, you can unmute yourselves if you'd like to talk. So we just have a few minutes to talk as a group. This section is for any questions we might have that we'd want someone to answer. Wendy, Jean, anyone in the group. So that was a lot of information we just heard. Does anyone have any questions that are popping up right now that you'd like to submit?
I'd like to know if we are going to continue the intergenerational project with Campbell School.
Oh, yeah. So Connie's referring to our Pen Pal project, which we have done for 2 school years. We pair ANV volunteers and members with a 4th or 5th grader, and they write letters back and forth. It's very fun. It's sweet. It is a great way to build connections in the community, to build intergenerational connections, to help kids with their writing and language skills. The teachers who have had kids participating are like over the moon with how much the kids enjoy it and how much it does improve their writing. Often kids are reluctant to write, so that is a great project. School has just started. We're just a few weeks in, so I'm hoping to restart that soon. We'll have a new batch of kids, some continuing on, and then a whole new class. So if anyone is interested in being a pen pal, you can email me, and I will get you set up. It's super fun. So yes, Connie.
Great.
Any other questions that popped up from Wendy's presentation?
I've heard a couple of comments from people that they're not real happy about the Zoom, about using Nextdoor for communications, that apparently things posted there don't always reach the intended recipients. So the question under the communications bullet is, are we looking at other ways of communicating?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good question. I know that the Nextdoor group was started as kind of another way for members and volunteers and staff to communicate informally. You know, we have emails that go out, we have the community update, but you know, people wanted a place where they could talk about, oh, anyone want to go see a movie, or you should check out this resource here, and that Nextdoor group was that idea. It isn't always the best mode of communication. I know some other villages have listservs, so there are some other options out there. I don't think any are being looked into right now, but that is a good question to put because I think other people will have ideas. So thank you. I will tell Jean that. All right. Any other thoughts, questions? Hi, Elise.
Hi, everybody. It's Elise Burns. Wendy noted the marketing initiative and looking for a marketing coordinator, but what are we doing to get the word out about ANV presently? I mean, I think we're depending a lot on word of mouth.
Yes.
But are we back to giving presentations around the community? Can we hear, are we reaching out to the church community like we had hoped? I mean, any more detail on that would be.
Okay, I will ask that. I know that there are presentations going on. I know that that is always an idea, like to get back to is, you know, going to the community association meetings and really spreading out throughout Arlington. That is a capacity issue right now, but I think with this new position, that could be, you know, that would be, I think, a priority. But thank you.
And when are we hoping to have that position filled? I mean, I know you're actively looking right now, right?
Yeah, I think that Wendy said they have about 5 or 6 great candidates. So I think the idea is just as soon as possible, basically.
Okay, terrific.
I mean, it's such a big position. I'm sure they want to make sure they get just the right person with the correct mix of skills.
Yeah. Thanks, Noelle.
Do anyone have any questions about the feedback that we heard either from the previous meetings or
and ask whoever the spokesperson is, ask them one question.
Okay, I guess we're going back.
And then we'll get each table and we'll keep on going. So I'm going to start over here. Who's our Paxton, you got a question?
Yeah, the question that I had was, what are we doing to better understand our volunteer structure? From the standpoint of, as Wendy pointed out, we have.
So two things, I think people basically have to stop talking so we can hear the person who's asking questions.
The question from our table is, how do we better understand our volunteer structure such that, as Wendy pointed out, we have on paper 400 and some volunteers, but only 200 and some that are active, and why, what counts for that? Such that, and obviously transportation is our bread and butter. This is why people sign up and why we're not able to fill 100% of our transportations, because we have people who sign up, and I've seen this happen where they do 1 or 2 or 3 and then we never see them again. So understanding why that is, such that we can do a better job in recruiting volunteers that we need. And secondarily to that, are we looking at volunteers that we don't necessarily need, such that they come on board, they don't find opportunities, because we don't have a lot of demand for that, and therefore they step back. So what are the reasons why, and understanding that better? I know we have to really decide that.
And that's the answer. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you we know the answer to that. That is the question. So one of the things we've done this year is we have tried to color volunteer lists. We've gone out, we've said, you haven't done service in more than 2 years. Do you still want to be a volunteer with ANV? Because one way to get a better handle on what's going on is to have real people on that list. So we're taking steps like that, but better understanding, once you engage a volunteer, you activate them. If they don't do anything in the first 2 or 3 weeks, you should be getting in touch with that person. You said you wanted to volunteer, you haven't done anything. I'm gonna point out Jinx, who I don't know from a hole in the wall, but she's a great example. She found us at the county fair. We did a great booth at the county fair. She walked up, she learned about us. That was middle of August. She signed up as a volunteer. She's done 4 completed rides, and then on Friday, she's signing up 2 back-to-back on Wednesday and 1 on Wednesday. On Monday. How do we figure out her storyline that she jumped in the deep end, and then we have other people who are just getting their toes wet? So that is the question. Thank you for the question. It's what we have to do.
Okay, now, who's our spokesperson here?
Excuse me, I've got a follow-up to that, your response. What about a buddy system, a mentoring system? So that when you see any members coming up, say, here's a contact with someone that's like, to reach out to people who have would you like to talk to someone?
So I'm gonna repeat that, so everybody can hear it. Why don't we set up a buddy system so that experienced volunteers and new volunteers can connect? It's a good idea, we're gonna put it on the list, and this time next year, when you see me doing the feedback, you better sit there and see that we did something along those lines, have a check mark. Go ahead.
So we were talking about when you volunteer with elder people who have issues with depression or things like that. And so where can you go to talk about the struggle with dealing with that and also to get information?
Again, a great question, and Jean, deals with this all the time, which is people calling into the office and what kind of referrals can we make, especially for mental health. There are resources we're aware of, but it's also tied to one of the things we talked about, more training for volunteers, so that they can, when they see this in the environment, they can identify it, give us feedback, and give us, we can figure out some things to do.
Next table.
By the way, just so you know, guys, we're capturing all these thoughts up on the Post-it notes, so don't think that we're just having a good memory of everything that everybody said.
Okay, here, can you hear me? Our main question here at this table is to talk about social isolation for those members who can't get out, and reaching those people and getting them together so that they have contact and they're not just sitting at home and just getting a ride or things like that. Can I just put in a plug here? As chairman of the events committee, we're always looking for new members, so any volunteers who might be interested in being on the events committee, come and see me. My name is Beverly. I'm the only Beverly, so I'm going to do that.
It's funny that Beverly says she's the only Beverly. We have 2 Charles Kings. We have 2 of a couple of different people. So being the only Beverly is a good sign for right now. We haven't found enough members. Absolutely a good point. One of the positions we're thinking about, it's not in the budget yet, is the idea of do we need a social worker? And that's not going to be but somebody who can help figure out a program for getting people who are at home more engaged. You're right, we don't have the answer. I don't feel the need to up here and give you an answer to every question that we get. I love hearing what your issues are that we should be prioritizing and emphasizing in the future.
Our question centered around how we address or would address capacity. Because on one hand, you have increase in questions, needs, requests, and then just the corresponding number of volunteers and funding. So how's that addressed between money, adding volunteers, anything and everything?
So we have, oddly enough, I would say, honestly, we have a pretty good pipeline of new volunteers. We had 96 new volunteers who came on board in 2022. We're close to hitting that same number this year. The challenge keeps being the one I mentioned. Someone volunteers, they go through the vetting process, they may even pay for their own vetting. They get activated, but then they don't do something. So we have to figure out how to better engage the volunteers who come to us. We have to absolutely keep looking for more volunteers, but we also have to do a better job of engaging the people who said they want to do something, but we haven't figured out how to activate them.
In this table?
Tom Griffith. Our question related to communications and whether, or what the relationship is and how ANV is communicating on the app called Nextdoor. Because some people felt like they used to receive notifications when something was posted on Nextdoor, or they didn't, and now it's changed, and so there were just questions about if that was still being used.
So Nextdoor is still being used, and what we probably have to do is provide a tip sheet. Because I agree with you, it used to be that I would get a weekly summary, and now I don't seem to get it. I posted something, this projection screen, we had a miserable one in the office that was from the 1950s. I posted we needed a projection screen on Nextdoor, our group. John Larimore responded and said, I've got one, you can borrow it. But I didn't realize he responded, Jean had to tell me. So my Nextdoor settings weren't set up to get that. So we will do a tip sheet to help everybody understand what to do better with Nextdoor.
The very beginning was done by email, and then the email disappeared, and you have to go to Nextdoor.
Yeah, so we have, yes, so we'll do a tip sheet to help people understand how they can get, the summary or the one-offs in their inbox for response.
I'll invite my table if I mischaracterized a question or two, but the first one that came up was a suggestion that the ANV office, do they have a subscription to the checkbook? This is a consumer checkbook, so that it's handy for calls that come in and people might be able to help them with a referral for a contractor or something.
So the answer is yes, we do, and the subscription is mine. I'm an ANV member, and as an ANV member, the office has my password. Whether we use it as much as we should, good point, we'll do better, but we do have access to a subscription.
Hi, I'm Gretchen. I think I'm the only Gretchen. Just a gentle correction about something on page 18 of your presentation. You use the word churches, and we prefer if you would change that to faith-based communities.
Absolutely.
Okay. We wondered if there should be a cadre of speakers, that apparently you're mainly the person that goes and speaks about ANV, and maybe there should be a group who would be willing to do that. That might help a little bit.
Again, great recommendation. If people are interested in being speakers and doing this kind of work, we've got the PowerPoint to give you. We'd love to have more people do that. Jean does it now, Mary Ellis does it, I do it. We're happy to have more people do it because things are starting up again. Yes, we've always done it on Zoom the last couple of years, but we're getting more requests for in-person. The communications and marketing person will also be somebody who can do those kinds of presentations, but there's more than we can fulfill.
And then,
One question.
At
At a time, one at a time. I'll be back. Clutches from your hand. Ms. Taylor.
I'm gonna bundle our questions. There are tours and things like that they have in Arlington for those part of the 55 plus, but one of the questions that came up at our table was, is there a way to connect people, which is a little part of my newsletter question, that like to just go and find someone else to go, like to the arena stage or NSO or something like that, without having to wait for a big tour that's gonna be organized and all of that. So maybe think about some way to connect other people in the organization. That's me holding it too far, sorry.
No, it's me standing up. I'm not sure what it is. We apologize to the people on Zoom because I know when it squeaks, it's worse for them than it is for us. Good idea. I think one of the tools that we could use for that is Nextdoor. That people can say, I want to go to see this show, is anybody else interested? And people can respond on Nextdoor if that's a more active involvement. Well, but you gotta figure out some way, I mean, how else are people gonna know what other people are interested in?
I've never even heard of it, I don't even know what that is.
So we can help, so next door, and we'll do a next door, maybe we'll do a next door Zoom, that's a good idea. Not either a next door Zoom, or we'll do a coffee and conversation on next door.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, that we occasionally get a request in the office for someone to accompany them to a dinner or whatever, and we put those in as requests and see if they get filled by another volunteer.
Right.
So, yeah,
But not member to member.
no,
Yeah.
no, never a volunteer, it's a request, right?
Okay, is this stable?
Hi, I'm Faye, and our question is, follow up after a job, like I know as a volunteer, I submit my miles and time, and I always write a little blip about the person. But as the recipients of this transportation service, they were wondering how, can they email the office to say, I had a great ride? How do they thank the driver? Is it just something between one and our own personal thing?
No, every thank you that comes into the office, Jean and the office staff, make sure it gets forwarded to the volunteer. We love being able to tell people they did a great job. If someone writes us a letter and it's intended for a volunteer, we'll take that letter and mail it to somebody, and then mail it to the volunteer.
And I will say, the new volunteer, that makes a huge difference. Because somebody did say something very nice, and it just made my day. It was like, oh, that was so nice to hear, you know, like.
So remember, we got about 27 people on Zoom, so they're gonna get a couple questions. Jean has, of course.
Coming in from Zoom, 3 questions. So their questions pertain to Nextdoor, to outreach, and to social engagement. First one is, the Nextdoor group is a way the village can communicate informally, but it has its issues. Are there other ways we can communicate with each other as a village?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to hear ideas from people as to how we could accomplish that. The real challenge is that, you know, whether it's a listserv, you know, we've decided to do a Nextdoor private group because it was effectively a listserv. You know, there are other organizations that will have a listserv or a Facebook group or something like that. We elected to go with Nextdoor as our equivalent of a listserv or a Facebook group. If there's a different tool that people think would be more widely used, we'd love to hear about it and figure out whether we can use it or not.
Thank you. Second question, in terms of community outreach, what is ANV currently doing to get the word out about our village? Are we reaching out to churches, neighborhoods, etc.?
Again, you know, where's the oracle and the glass ball in the middle of the table? So yes, we do that. We don't do it hugely, we certainly do it. We've done a 55+ presentation every quarter that brings on 15 to 20 people. Anyone who comes to us as an organization saying, please do a presentation, we do. But we don't have an active outreach into all the civic associations, all the faith-based community, blah, blah, blah. You'll give me the right words. You know, we don't have an active marketing program for all of that. That's why we're hiring the communications, marketing, and outreach person. That person will come in, develop a plan, execute on a plan. We'll do drop-in articles into civic and association newsletters. We already got one, I'm looking around. Barbara helped us get one into the Bar Crop newsletter. We've got a whole little article in there. So the marketing outreach person will help us with an active outreach program that will get us more speaking engagements than we have now. But if any of you in this room know somebody who wants to hear us talk, trust me, we can fill that request, we can talk to them.
Somewhat related to that, also, are business owners around here who may be able to discount their services to ANV members.
So again, we put that on the list. That's another question is Bob Circles. I'm gonna let Jean go back to her question in a minute. These are all time-consuming activities. So I'm gonna get back to the same story. If someone wants to raise their hand and do it, I'm happy to work with you on it. But there is no time available to any of the people that we talk to that can do that.
So I think you know my colleague Noelle Derman is there with the Zoom folks. She's facilitating their meeting, and she's actually already answered this question for us, but I'll share it with you. Will we be continuing the intergenerational pen pal project with Campbell Elementary School? So Noelle has answered yes. She has been the coordinator, one spearheading that program. So she answers yes, and she extends the invitation, if any of you who are members are interested in being a part of that, to contact her. And again, that's Noelle Derman. And that's the end of the Zoom questions. Thank you, Zoom folks.
Thank you, Zoom folks, great. In the interest of time, I'm only going to go around once again, each table. So if you have several questions, pick one. You don't have another one, thank you. Oh, Mike. Second question.
The questions come up about volunteer orientation, etc. We used to have a volunteer breakfast, which I cooked for, and it was a really nice morning, and people would come and they would chat about being a volunteer and what the challenges were and exchange tips. And I think we ought to get, as with our other social activities, we ought to get back to that one. Volunteer breakfast.
And I would say I never even heard that, so thank you, I'll talk to you about it.
It was for members and
One per table, You don't have, okay, you get there.
I'm sure, well, we'll let you do. But yeah, with the membership breakfast, I think it should be volunteers only, because when I was, but also I feel like there's a different dynamic too with women sometimes. I think when I go to women's luncheons, we totally avoid politics, we totally avoid certain subjects. And so we have a more lighthearted chat, which is great, but when I was going to the membership breakfast, I didn't get any mentoring because the person I'm friendly walk with two members came also, and that was the issue, so I couldn't talk about the person that I was to. So that way I never got any,
Thank you. Over here.
I'd like to come back to our original suggestion from this table is a little bit more outreach to people who can't get out. And what we're talking about is part of what Wendy talked about, the aging demographic, the people who really are frail and cannot go certain places or do certain things. And I think there's a feeling among a lot of people that all the activities we've been talking about are geared to people who are younger. We're talking about the late 70s, early 80s, 90s people, and I think we need to make some kind of effort to reach out to people like that with social events to help them avoid becoming isolated. A phone buddy, talking to somebody on the phone every now and again is a help, but it's not really socializing with a group. So if there's some way somebody can think of to do that, that would be super.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking is that, the volunteer committee used to be a lot more active, but there were people who were volunteers from the very, very beginning. And as time goes on, you kind of get a little worn out, or you just can't think of anything, or you just can't do it anymore. And I think it would be really a good idea to try this out, try a contractor for a while who would organize, the volunteer committee can come up with ideas, and anybody can come up with ideas, and a contractor can sort them out and figure it out and find the venue and get it organized, and then get people to help get, for example, the older people to try to come to these activities, or any other members and volunteers. We used to have a dine around for 80 and above people, and I really think we should get back to that, because I think that some people in this room really benefited from it. I'm planning to get really old, and I would like this dine around for me when I'm 85. So I would like to see us get back to that, and I think that some of the people who volunteer to help facilitate that dine around would help again if somebody worked to find a venue that would work, and if we could have it, because I think that would be really, really be good. But that would involve a lot of outreach to the older members. But anyway, that's my thought.
You know, one of the, oftentimes you hear a question and you immediately think of a story. And the best story I can offer is Jean. We have the ladies' lunch that gets together, and we had one of our 96-year-old members who wanted to join the ladies' lunch. But the challenge was, as we're saying, getting her there, getting her back, et cetera. So Jean, said, I'm gonna take this person. We wanna make sure that she gets out, she engages. Jean provided the ride, took her to lunch, stayed with her there. It happened to be the woman's birthday. So she considered this lunch to be her birthday celebration. And the comment she made as she walked out was,
Well, I'll share. Does this work?
Turn it off.
Turn it on, thank you. Yeah, that was a great day. Two elements to that story. The reason that I provided that ride is because the volunteer who had agreed to provide that ride stood the lady up. This is something that we experience on occasion. It's very rare, but we take it very seriously when it happens, and we do anything we can from within the office to be sure that member gets that ride, even if it means that I or Wendy or Mary Alice or somebody else goes out and provides that ride. So because this woman, 98 years old, had requested the ride well in advance, and she requested the ride only because we from the office had called her as a new member, encouraging her to go to that event, because she hadn't used any of the services or benefits. So it's a part of our member engagement is to reach out and contact new members, especially those who we noticed haven't used any of our services or services or come to our activities. So we had reached out specifically and made a warm invitation to her to please join the ladies' lunch and she could request a ride. So she had done all of that. We had matched her with a willing driver. And the morning of the ride, we called her to ask if she was ready for her ride and remind her. And she was waiting and the driver never showed up. So luckily my colleagues took cover for me and I was able to dash out and take her to the lunch. She had a wonderful time. And as we were leaving, when she was getting up to go, she looked around at all the ladies at the table and she said, this was just so wonderful to get out and spend the day with all of you young ladies. And the ladies were, I would say, all in their 70s or older. And it was just delightful for her, it was delightful for the other lunch participants, and we were just so glad that we were able to make it work for her to go and be a part of that lunch. So that's the story.
Thanks, Jim, that's a great story. You had a question from this table?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to clarify something. You talked about Nextdoor and ANV having their own Nextdoor. What is that
What does
site?
that mean? So Nextdoor is a social media site.
Yeah.
So anybody can log on, it's where you really use your real name and it's not some alias or, strange person. And generally all of Nextdoor, people are posting things all the time. I need a recommendation for this, I'm looking for that, is there a babysitter, is there a dog walker? Within Nextdoor, we created a private group for ANV. So the private group for ANV is just ANV members and volunteers. We have to approve you to be in that private group. So you're not communicating with the world at large or sharing your story with the world at large, but you're sharing your story with other ANV members. And there's a process to be approved for that group. There's a link, we can share it with you. But that's what we're using as a listserv for inside communications between members and volunteers. Like anything else, it's not widely used. A lot of what they call lurkers, people who read messages but won't talk or respond themselves, but that's the tool. And I think what we'll do is a coffee and conversation on it. We'll do a tip sheet on it. We'll talk about how to improve usage of it.
Yeah, I wanted to find out the link. We got the Nextdoor.
Yes, we
Not that specifically.
Yeah, right, we can get you that, no problem.
A private Facebook would be so much better.
Well, that just means another thing to manage. And so this is always the issue, what can we manage, what can't we manage? We're not gonna likely, I'm just gonna be honest, keep two of these things going. But when our new communications person comes on, we're making so many tasks for that person to do, they will look into, ANV does have a Facebook account. So we'll figure out whether we can do more with that Facebook account.
But that's an open.
I would like to suggest that there be a membership list that has people's address and their picture, if they so desire. Because it would be so nice to be able to put a face to a name.
So one of the questions we have on the member directory, and I'm gonna ask just for a vote, people say we want it, Are you willing to put your name and address on a directory that would be like a telephone book, available to everybody? It's not gonna be behind a password. So one, are people willing to have their address on the membership directory? Raise your hand if you say yes. And people on Zoom vote. Well, let's just talk about that. So we had a lot of people saying yes, but not everyone. Would you be willing to have your phone numbers on that membership directory? Raise your hand. Fewer people are raising their hand for that. So what we're challenged with as we think about the membership directory is just how to make it happen with a variety of, private information. Your address, your phone number, your cell number perhaps, certainly the community you live in. So I'm not saying this is not a good idea. It is a good idea. We just have to figure out the dynamics of how to bring it about with the kind of information that people want to share.
They may not want their name there at all, so.
Right, so there's a lot, so you can imagine the challenge of getting it done, keeping it up.
I would just say, put out a notice and say, tell us what you want in the membership list, and if you are not responding within a month.
That's what, Dolores, that's a good idea. I never thought of doing it that way. We'll think about it. Thank you.
So Wendy, this is related to the COGS issue, the consideration may be given to making certain that ANV lists its events to the WAVE calendar. This is the Washington Area Village Event Calendar. So there was just kind of an aside to the previous conversation. The question is, from the table, is a rather delicate one, and perhaps best discussed offline, I don't know. But as a volunteer, how best are volunteers advised to handle allegations or suspicions of elder abuse?
Very challenging. Number one, tell the office, tell Jean. And you don't have to write a broad email to the office staff. Jean's email is readily available. You can write to her directly. This is you understand we're talking about a very serious issue here. So if you don't know it, Jean Renee, JeanneRaddey @anvarlington.org. And if you don't get Jean's address right now, write the office and say, I want Jean's email. So there is a way for you to privately share that information with us. What happens after that, different story. But there is a way for you to privately share that information with us. Thank you.
Do you folks have another question?
When volunteers see the emails, there's a neighborhood rather than a clear address. When I get a request, when I see requests, a lot of times I am on the map trying to figure out where the heck that neighborhood is. I don't know the neighborhoods in Arlington by name. Could there be a way of doing like a general address, a block address, or something a little bit more specific?
So that's interesting. I think that the new data system, one of the new data systems we're looking at is incredibly sophisticated. When you go in to look at a request, it's got a little map, it's got a little pin that will go down on the map. It won't give you the absolute home address of that person, but it'll give you, like you're saying, the street, perhaps. So one, technology is going to solve some of that. But two, what we do right now is we do use neighborhood areas, and we could probably put a PDF more easily up on our website, or even share it during training of what those neighborhood names are for Arlington. It does exist. Yeah.
Folks have another question?
I do some of the new member intakes, and we're talking here about the connections with a buddy for a concert or a show. And I find that there's some people that don't use the internet at all. And I always feel when I leave thinking, I talk about all these great things, but how do we keep those folks up to date? I know there used to be, I know when I drop off a newsletter. Do we have an ability to do something for those?
So what we do right now, and again, I'm not offering any of these as the best solution, but it's what we do right now. Every 2 weeks when we do the community update, we physically mail 40 or 45 copies to people who we know don't have internet access or don't have an email. So there is a full paper copy, 12 or 13 pages, copied, folded, stuffed in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and it goes to the post office, and it is mailed to them. That doesn't solve the problem. I mean, the reality is, a lot of what we do is electronic, you know, and that's a small way the world we live in, but we do mail it to people who don't have email.
So it's up to us to make sure we tell you that this person needs this.
Yes, when we do a new member intake, if the person doesn't have the internet, or doesn't have email, or doesn't use it, it's one of the things you should be telling us.
Yeah, on the intake form, we have a block for email address for new members that are coming in, their application, a block for email address. A lot of people, new incoming members will think that they need to have an email address or they can't join. So sometimes they'll put one, either theirs, somebody else's, and made up something because they think it's a required And it is up to the intake volunteer. Our volunteers who go into the prospective members' homes to meet with them, to check the paperwork, collect payment, and do all of that important work. It is up to you to make a note on the form, but to have that conversation with the incoming member of, is this an email address that you actually use? We send out our community updates, events bulletins by email, and we'll send it to this email address. If you don't want us to, let us know. And then, yes, mark it on the form, and when we register that person in the database, we'll make sure that if they're not using that email address, we don't want to receive it directly there, we'll send it to that same email.
That's great, thank you. That is.
This is a comment about the pen pal program. Noelle, this is Faye. I was on the first round of the pen pal program. I see Margie here, she was also. And it is the most fantastic experience. I'm getting emotional. I met the sweetest little boy. His name is Mason, he's now in the 6th grade. He was such a sweetheart. And we have become friends outside of the pen pal program. He's now in 6th grade at Thomas Jefferson Middle School. And I went to his programs at the school, and I met him the first time a year ago. Margie and I were there together. And I met his mom. She was going around asking all the older people, are you pen pal? Are you pen pal? Everybody there was like 35, 40 years old, carrying off the gray hairs in the backseat. And she was so thrilled to meet me. And she said, oh, Mason enjoyed writing to you so much. And I loved writing to him. I would send him pictures of myself, my family, vacations that I went on, just letting him know I'm a real person. This wasn't a perfunctory writing lesson. And he would share a lot with me. And when he saw me, he ran to me, gave me this huge hug. I lost it. I was like, I'm in love with this little boy. He is so darling. And so I went to, that was in April of this year. And then I went to his band concert in June. I stayed here before I left for the beach so I could go to the band concert. He was thrilled to death. As it turned out, we started, and his mom said, now that I've met you, I will give you his cell phone number so you can text him. And so I texted him back and forth. He's not new, he's getting used to it. But in conversation with Amanda, his mom, I had tickets to see The Lion King at the Kennedy Center, and I offered them to her. And she said, well, would you like to take Mason? I said, oh, I would love to. And we had the best time. He was so thrilled. He's just the sweetest and the most mannerly little person. I had lunch with them last weekend, and once again, running to me, a huge hug.
So Faye, my comment is, send me a picture. The next time you take him somewhere, send us a picture so we can put it up on the website, and we can share that story more broadly.
Yeah. So my point is, be a pen pal. You never know what's going to happen. It's the best experience I've ever had. I've never had kids, therefore I never had grandchildren. And it's a fabulous experience, and which I will be in his life forever.
Get his mother's permission to use this picture. We have a couple of things from our Zoom group.
So in response to the membership directory, we have a few answers from the Zoom crowd that yes, they would be willing to share their name, address, and phone number. I haven't heard from everybody, that's not a statistical 100%, but there is some interest there. And back to the topic of Nextdoor and ways we can get everybody to be more readily in touch with each other directly without going through the office. They're suggesting WhatsApp. I'm not sure if anybody here suggested that, but WhatsApp is another, it's a WhatsApp, you can make phone calls, you can text, it's largely for, I use it for phone calls and texting, it might be capable of much more. So that may be a way, especially if people get connected, like at a meeting like this, you could share phone numbers with each other, and if both of you are on WhatsApp, you could develop a bigger group. You could have multiple people on WhatsApp, and it's a nice way to stay connected and meet up if you're going somewhere, to stay in touch with each other without going to a website. It's just using your phone number. That's their suggestion.
Thank you, Zoom folks. We want to get your ideas for the next 3 to 5 years. And if you've been watching the clock, we will not be able to do all that and have our wrap on 15 minutes. So it will take a little bit longer than 12 o'clock. If anybody really has to get going, just get up quietly, we'll miss you and you won't get your wrap up. That's up to you. So the last part of this is, these are great questions and comments. I mean, it's just marvelous. Think about the village 3 to 5 years from now. We're all 3 to 5 years older. So are the rest of the members and volunteers. And hopefully we've got new blood coming in all the time. But 3 to 5 years from now, what would you like the village to be really paying attention to? And maybe something we're already doing, that's okay. So we're gonna be concise in your suggestions on what should we really be paying attention to. So folks in here, talk like you have done before, come up with a spokesperson. Folks on Zoom, Noel, we'll look forward to your comments to Jean, we'll get you as we go around. So I'm only gonna give you about 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay, I think they turned off the sound in the room. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we just have a very brief time. Who has ideas about where they would like to see ANV in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, one thing I'd like to see is the ability to provide transportation to people in wheelchairs.
Okay.
So whether ANV buys a vehicle or contracts with somebody that can be more responsive than, the Star Transport and the things the county does.
Yep, that's a great suggestion. Thanks, Gary.
I would like to second that suggestion that ANV invest in a handicap van. As our population grows older, we will have many more people needing that.
Yep, definitely true. Okay.
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
This is Jill, and I would like to have someone, or I don't know, whenever they can. I don't think there should be a committee or anything, but I find more and more that buildings do not comply wholly with the ADA regulations about, doors and ramps and things like that. Even medical buildings, my medical building, for example, that I go to as often as anywhere, and they don't have an automatic door on one of their doors that you're supposed to open up. When you have, it's just insane. So anyway, any way they can, I would like to hear them, make proposals for people to do that.
Okay, so more advocating maybe for more accessible location. Okay,
Right.
Thank you, Jill.
Right.
Noel, I wanted to just say that I'd love to see more intergenerational programs. I mean, that was a lovely story, and I participated in that program too, and it was wonderful. But, I'm wondering about programs, even getting people to come and visit. That might be maybe high schoolers doing it for their community service requirement or something, especially people who have languages that we don't offer among our volunteers, for people who want to speak in another language. And that might be something that we might want to look into.
Okay, great. Good point. Thank you, Joan.
I have a real concern about, it's Pat. I have a real concern about feedback. Right now, in order to tell ANV how wonderful someone was who provided me with the service, there are, I don't know, 4 separate email exchanges taking up office staff time. Technology should be able to provide a private way for the volunteer to say someone needs extra help or whatever, or sliding into dementia, and for the recipient of services to say, this individual didn't show up or whatever, but also to say, Jinx is wonderful and I need you guys to keep her on.
Okay, so easier ways to communicate feedback.
Technology.
Positive.
We need technology.
Maybe that would be part of the new system they're talking about setting up. Maybe there would be an easier way to communicate. Okay, good point. I think we probably have like 1 more minute. Anyone has any other thoughts? What about how ANV is in the wider Arlington community, how we interact with Arlington as a whole, like bigger vision for the organization? Any thoughts?
I would like to see a more proactive push on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah. We've made great progress on diversity and income, but there are other aspects where we haven't, as Wendy did point out. And I think what we really need is set up a working group on that who can come up with a strategic plan on how to do that kind of outreach.
Yep, great point. There are many, like you said, there are many different kinds of diversity, and like you mentioned, we did a great job on income base, but there are, there's the LGBTQIA plus community. There are many different ways we can reach out. So I think that is a great idea to start a group or a committee, something specifically dedicated to those.
And I can add that I've been looking at what Northwest Neighborhood Village has done, and they've done a lot. They've really created some footsteps for us to follow.
That's great, because you don't always have to start from scratch, right?
No.
Northwest Neighbors, you said?
Northwest Neighbors, yes.
Thoughts, suggestions, maybe from the membership side, some programming you'd like to see?
Well, you got about 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I've seen feedback from members on, like, I would like to be in a memoir writing group. What about providing meals to people who are going through a tough time? Anything like that?
One idea from each table.
Okay, I'm going to start typing these up. Thank you.
What do you think we should really be paying attention to in the next 3 to 5 years? Are you still spokesperson?
The concern our table has is 3 to 5 years, obviously we're all going to be older, and some of us are not very adept at the computer, the cell phone situation, texting. How will ANV be able to accommodate these people that are not computer savvy?
We have some, and there might be more. Are you still speaking, Gretchen? The only Gretchen?
I'm sorry to say. In 3 to 5 years, as everyone's saying, we're all going to be older, so the need is for younger people. And we were talking about how we expect people to come to us, but we really need to go to them. And where are the areas where younger people go?
Bars.
And one. All right, so each one of us is going to go to a bar this weekend and find people. No, we've actually mentioned PTAs. It might be possible that they would give us a few minutes just to say, listen, this is an opportunity, as Jinx is saying, your kids are getting older, why not do a little bit of volunteering in the community, in the whole community, rather than just at your school?
And when we say younger people, you're talking about volunteers.
Yes.
But we also need members who are 50s, 60s.
Parents or PTA people?
Parents or PTA? The parents of the PTA, parents. Anybody?
I yield the floor.
You yield the floor. The floor has been yielded.
I think our table came up with the idea that there probably needs to be some kind of a focus group in 3 to 5 years. We all agreed, and it's kind of been said already, that, whereas we still trouble with the digital divide now, in 3 to 5 years, more of us are going to be able to understand digital technology. But I think perhaps having a focus group or a number of focus groups where we sit down between volunteers and members and figure out what is needed might be a worthwhile way to proceed as time goes on. And of course, Wendy, you'll still be here, so I hope you're taking that down.
You can't get older, Wendy. Not allowed.
None of the three of us are gonna get older. You have a pipeline.
You got another Sandy?
I mean, I think it's the same, which is growth is good, but growth is hard. And it's how do we continue the pipeline of members and volunteers? And I think volunteers seem to be the best recruiters of more volunteers. Because we can talk it up, we can talk about the benefits and all of that. So maybe, as to your point, maybe back to a volunteer breakfast or a couple of volunteer activities where we really get ourselves powered up to go out and each of us find 2 or 3 people in our personal communities that might enjoy hearing more about ANV. So I think the outreach is all terrific and that falls on you in the office, but I think as volunteers, we can do a lot.
Thank you. Larry?
We have things we need to think about in 3 to 5 years, but we don't have a solution, okay? But the issue though is we were talking about kind of social isolation and, people that don't become very active, how do we reach them? One of the thoughts we had is, yes, we'll have new members coming, but look around, and if you think 3 to 5 years, how many more of us will have some disabling condition or just be more inactive ourselves and stay at home? And therefore, how does the organization reach out to those individuals? Because much of what we do is reacting. That is, you call and ask for assistance. You come to an event. But if you become inactive and a little isolated, then the organization has to find that other way to get to those folks who might be isolating. We also threw in this the issue of language diversity. That's going to be another problem. But as we said, we don't have a solution, but we know that's got to be something we think about going to the future.
You folks?
I just thought it'd be worth just sort of looking down the road, how to balance out, on the one hand, loneliness versus solitude, with a little privacy thrown in there, and help us to make it work for individuals as well as a group.
Stable? No? Okay. And anything else you have, folks?
Well, along the lines, the vein of helping people become more social, or a way to make sure that we can provide the transportation that they might need. Because I know a lot of times members will not go someplace because that's using up one of the rides that they're entitled to, and so they realize, okay, I can't afford that. So a way to include additional transportation that would allow them to become more involved, and also the idea of, can we find ways to we're no longer doing local villages, if you will, but helping people find people in close proximity to themselves. So if they want to do things, they don't have to travel across the county to find somebody. Maybe they can find somebody, in their neighborhood or one of the neighborhoods adjacent to them, to make it easy for them to get together.
You folks?
This is Arvind. I was just thinking about how to approach the entire Arlington community. One of the things we always get is in the mail, small postcard from the painters and from all those construction people and so many, it's not even funny. But if we write a small postcard including, actually your catchphrase is age in place. Age in place is the one which will sell you. And also what happens that when, like we moved here 2 years back, we had no idea about Arlington Village. We wanted to volunteer. So therefore, I think if it is some postcard which can be mailed with the succinct information about the Arlington neighborhood village, I think you might get the 0.1% of the Arlington community, somebody responding to it. Because when we came, we had no idea about this. I don't know how I got this information. I jumped to it because we and myself, my wife, both are now volunteers here in this, and we love it. But we want to get more people involved, and when if it is required, not necessary, but I am willing to share some costs for that, for the post office. Thank you.
Have you got suggestions from our Zoom friends?
So our Zoom friends have several ideas. We would like to see ANV be able to provide transportation for people in wheelchairs. This could be done by purchasing a van or possibly contracting with a transportation provider in our area. Second, we'd like to see more intergenerational opportunities. For example, in person, teams could provide tech help, conversation in other languages, etc. I will add to that right now our minimum age for volunteers is 18. Third, advocacy in the community for more accessibility and making Arlington more age-friendly. Fourth is easier ways to provide direct feedback on volunteers and services, perhaps with new technology. I've asked the Zoom group for clarification on that because I'd like to know what is difficult right now about providing that feedback. Right now, if anybody has feedback about volunteers or services, they can certainly call the office and speak with anybody in the office or ask specifically for me, for Wendy, for our volunteer coordinator, and share feedback, either through a phone call or an email. But this group is asking for easier ways to provide that feedback, perhaps with technology. The last one, proactive push on diversity, equity, and inclusion through a working group, a committee, and possibly learning from other villages. And that's it. Yeah, they've responded now to my request for clarification on the providing feedback on volunteers. She says that there was a feeling expressed that the current way of giving feedback is a bit cumbersome.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you. And as a give back, we have a raffle. All right.
So I was asked to do the opening welcome, and I'm asked to do the final thank you. So for starters, thanks to Bob, and all the folks who have done anything to make this thing, to get it organized and have it ready. Yes.
And there's our technology person who's looking just like.
Yes, right back there, who deserves lots of thanks back there. I also have to say, there are so many things today that were just very good, very informative, good ideas. But if nothing else, I love the story about the Pen Pal program. That was tremendous. Thank you for talking about that. So both the folks on Zoom and everybody in the room, thank you very much for coming, for participating, for submitting ideas, for thinking about where we go as an organization, and all that you do to contribute to it. The other thing I'd say is, obviously, you know, in a couple of days, you say, oh, I should have told them about this idea. That's fine. You can always contact us at the office. You can talk to Wendy, you can talk to me. But please, don't hesitate to submit other ideas, things that would be helpful for helping us grow together as an organization. And with that, I think all I have left is to say, give ourselves a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
You don't have to pay 3 tickets.